welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Guide to Classics. This is the second installment of my book guides from an English major. Basically, I'm giving advice from an English major of how to read certain things, what certain genres or authors mean, and just giving a little bit more of a deep dive into things. So these are some of my tips on guides to reading classics. Because really, here's the real truth. Classics can be very intimidating, and a lot of people don't want to even bother reading them. They're like, ugh, I read those in high school. I don't even want to try again. But there's still some really good classics on there they might be low-key interested in, but they don't even want to try because they don't know where to start, or they don't know how to read it, or they're intimidated by it, whatever the case may be. These are just some guides to how I've read classics and what has worked for me. This might not necessarily work for you, but this is just some ideas of how you can read a classic and how this might help and make reading a classic a lot easier for you. So hopefully this is helpful. I've read several classics in my lifetime for being an English major, and also just like I read Jane Eyre when I was 16. Like, who does that? Not many people can read Jane Eyre when they're 16. I mean, I read Treasure Island when I was young. I read Prince and the Pauper, Charles Dickens, when I was quite young. I want to say I was 12. So, I mean, I've been reading classics for a while, so being an English major wasn't a far stretch for me. People always had struggled with the way that language is, and how language is in classics, which can be harder to grasp because language changes. Any language changes over time. So how classics are is not how we necessarily talk like or write today at all. Like, there's very big differences in how we do those. So they might be harder. That makes them a little bit harder to understand because language has evolved over time. So I'm going to talk into how that, can impact your reading of a classic and what things to circumvent that and make them easier to digest if you want to try to read a classic. And I encourage you to. There's plenty of classics that are bad, that objectively are bad and or subjectively are bad, but there can be classics that are good. And I definitely believe that there is a book that is considered a classic that is out there for someone that they just haven't discovered yet. I know this is going to come out probably maybe as controversial because Bookstagram's a thing and people love an aesthetic, but I just strongly agree with this. I don't like buying classics with pretty covers. As much as I love a pretty cover, don't get me wrong, I love pretty covers oh so much. But I don't buy like the Jane Austen novels that have all 6 novels in them. I don't buy the Shakespeare, with all Shakespeare plays in them with this really gorgeous cover. I don't buy like all of the Dickens stories in one novel with the very pretty cover. As much as I love pretty covers, don't get me wrong. But I get all the things that have footnotes. I love books that have footnotes. Why? Because they usually give me insights on what a passage or a line or a phrase or just even a little bit of historical context of what that particular character is thinking or saying, the historical context of what that means. So those footnotes can be really, really helpful and in understanding the text and understanding what the story means. So I've pulled out my Jane Eyre copies before and my Jane Austen copies before. They're Penguin Classics. So they have numbers and then they have footnotes in the back. So I flip to my footnote page quite often as I'm reading so I can just kind of understand the context and understand some of the bits of language that are described a little bit more that I might not be able to look up in a dictionary that are specific maybe to the novel itself, and or just helps expand the story a little bit more, or a bit of outdated language that we don't necessarily use that's explained in the footnote as well. I find that really, really helpful, and Shakespeare especially, I find that very, very helpful. Not to say that books with pretty covers don't do that, but a lot of them don't. I feel like, why bother with the pretty covers then if I'm not going to still understand what I'm reading? So a pretty cover is great. I prefer a book with some sort of footnote, and or if you really, really want to deep dive into just classic, then you get an annotated version. An annotated version will have like all the footnotes usually on the page with you and really intense descriptions of what this is referencing, what the text means, what it's getting, what historical context it's referencing, and just all sorts of layers and layers of what you're reading. That's if you really want to deep dive into a classic though. So be forewarned on getting an annotated text. And usually an annotated text will be twice as long because there's like so many footnotes and historical notes that the things will be added to it. So just be aware of that. I don't have pretty covers of my classics, I'm sorry, but I also really, really care to understand what I'm reading, and to do that, I need my footnotes. So pry my Penguin classics out of my cold dead hands, because I'm not giving them up. Just consider that when you're shopping for your classic and or getting it at the library, to get something that's annotated or to get something that actually has notes and that kind of thing, to be able to make it a lot easier for you to read. The next suggestion I would make is, if you're buying a classic book in a different language, pay attention to the translator. Translator can make or break a book, right? Because if they're translating from a different language, then they can totally change the context of the book depending on how they translate a text. One of the examples that I have of this, I unfortunately don't have it in front of me, so I can't tell you the example specifically in terms of what happened. But basically, the story is called Odyssey. The character Odysseus is traveling from the Trojan War to back home, and he takes a very, very long journey to get back home. And there was a translator, a female translator, mind you, who translated a bit of text very differently. And a bunch of male translators were all up in arms about it because, men. It totally changed the context of the translation, and she looked at it with a very different lens than these other male translators had in the past. If I can find the reference of what she specifically translated, I will link it in the description below in an article that I find. But I love that. I love that a translation can really, really change a whole dynamic of a character or a whole arc or something, make the story just much more relevant and much more different than what maybe a previous translator thought it meant. So translations make all the difference. Pay attention to the translator. Pay attention to how people are reviewing about what the translator is doing. Find a really good, solid translated edition, because that can make or break a story for you. I think it can be really relevant to a story, and just something to really consider and pay attention to when you're looking into a classic, especially that is translated in a different language. So this is going to sound weird, but bear with me. So one of the ways that's really helpful for classics that I found is reading it out loud and or an audiobook. If audiobooks are your thing and you could do audiobooks, and classics may be something generally that are really hard for you to physically read, then I recommend audiobooks to you. Try a classic in an audiobook style. See if that helps. I know a lot of people who do Jane Austen that way because they just cannot physically get through a book of hers, but they'll listen to it on audiobook and it's a much better experience for them. They're actually able to get through her book a lot easier. Again, that's because language changes. So sometimes reading language is very different than hearing it and or talking it. And if that's not in your ability, then that's fine. That's totally understandable. Disabilities sometimes make it very difficult to do audiobooks, and or talking books out loud are not necessarily easy for everyone to do based on learning disabilities and that kind of thing. For most neurotypical people, reading out loud is how we learned how to read. We learned how to read it out loud, and we learned how to our language through reading out loud. So there has been times where I literally sat through a text just not able to really understand what my eyes were reading, but reading it out loud helped me listen to it, process it better, and understand it better. So if you're having really passages that you're struggling through for that reason, I recommend doing that. I read most of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics by reading it out loud. Most of the time when my roommate wasn't there, I was by myself. I would strongly recommend it. Again, it's not applicable to everyone, but if there's passages that you're struggling through, reading out loud might really, really help you. A lot of classics have these really long run-on sentences that we don't necessarily write or talk like anymore. So I recommend reading out loud. You might actually have a better understanding of it if you hear yourself reading it. Again, might not recommend it doing it around people, so audiobook might be another alternative for classics for you. And I have read some classics that way too. Refer to online guides if needed. If you need to look at SparkNotes to understand what you read, then look at SparkNotes. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't understand why it's like there's such a dynamic of, oh, if I didn't understand a classic, it just must mean I'm stupid, or I just don't understand it, or I'm too dumb to read this. No, that's not the case. It's just that these classics were not necessarily written in a time. They were written in a specific time in a specific era, and or they were relevant to the times that they were in that you might not understand the historical context of. So refer to SparkNotes, refer to summaries, refer to study questions to really think and analyze the classic that you're reading, if that helps you. Don't be ashamed of that. Don't think it's because you have to be less than to go to SparkNotes. I love SparkNotes. I didn't necessarily use SparkNotes a whole heck of a lot, but I had my classes I was able to go to and discuss it. And then it was like, oh, in discussion, I finally understood kind of more what the book was about and what it was saying. So that helped me in discussion. But if you don't have that discussion, if you don't have like a local book club for yourself that we read in this class, if you're just reading it on your own, then yes, please go to an online guide. There's so many like study guides out there for certain classics. You won't be want for information and material. So read those, refer to those if you like, just to get some more understanding of what you're reading, or I don't understand what just happened in this book. Refer to an online guide, go to a study summary, a chapter summary, read that and go, oh, now I totally understand what's happening. There's no shame in doing that. There's no problem in doing that. Do that if you need to understand the classic. That's totally fine. And another thing that I recommend is skim. Classics are wordy as hell because most of them got paid by the word. Dickens was a serial. Most of his books were serials, so his was printed in newspapers. He got paid by the word, and the man was a hungry man. Like, how else was he going to survive? Keep that in mind in some of the things that you read. Skim it if it's like, oh gosh, there's like this huge paragraph or like 10 pages of people doing nothing. Skim it. That's fine. You don't have to read specifically every word for you to understand the text. That's okay to skim. And then if for gaps that you missed in your skimming, refer to online guides. Like, you can get through this. You can get through it. Skim if you need to, skip parts if you need to. I mean, you don't really need to know about like the whole history of Elvish in J.R.R. Tolkien. Like, skim. That's totally fine. It's really okay to do that. It's okay to skim part of a text that isn't relevant to the story. If it's just giving you history or background information that's not necessarily the story, then don't worry about it. You can skim. It's totally okay to skip. I know that people, again, frown on that, but no judgment. The next suggestion I would make is I would really, really strongly suggest to join a book club or a buddy read or a book discussion about people who want to read the same classic. It just makes a classic more enjoyable if you're discussing with someone other people's perspectives. Just in general, I feel like a book club's really useful for all books, but specifically for a classic, it's really, really helpful to have some sort of discussion or someone you can bounce ideas off of, either to understand the text and or to get different perspectives of what the text means to them. And I would really strongly recommend that for reading a classic. And it just makes reading just overall more fun anyway. So strongly recommend you taking that chance and doing that. Here's my last point, which is a very important one. It's okay to not like a classic and or to DNF a classic. It's okay. You don't have to like classics. You don't have to finish a classic. It's fine. Like, I know there's so much judgment, and that's why I think classics can be so intimidating for people and people not wanting to read them because they're just immediately like, I don't like them. That's okay. You don't have to like classics. You can, and if you try them genuinely and still don't like them, then that's okay. That's fine. I would recommend maybe trying a different type of genre of classics, or try a different author and maybe try again. But if you also didn't like it, that's okay, because there's plenty of classics that I didn't like and or that I will never read. A perfect example of that for me is I'm probably going to never read War and Peace. Like, ever. Like, just no interest. Russian literature is extremely dense for me. I have a really hard time getting through any Russian literature in general. I don't think War and Peace is ever a book that I'm going to touch with a 10-foot pole. And I'm okay with that. Moby Dick by Herman Melville. I'm never going to read Moby Dick. Never. I read short stories by Herman Melville. I would strongly recommend Bartleby, The Tale of Bartleby. I think I got the title right. I'll link it down or something. I'll put something here if I got it wrong. His writing is really great. I do not dislike his writing or his stories, but his writing style is super dense and super boring. So I could only handle the short stories. I read the short stories and I was like, these are great. There's no way I would ever touch Moby Dick because it is a whole novel of this writing style and I could not get through it. It just won't happen for me. And that's totally fine. I am okay with that. I've accepted that. That is totally okay. It's okay not to finish a classic. It's okay to DNF a classic. It's okay not even to read a classic. It's all fine. Don't feel like you have to be judged for it, or people, especially snobby romance people or Regency romance people, will be like, oh, you haven't read a Jane Austen. How dare you? No. It's okay. If you can't get through a Jane Austen, that's fine. They're hard to read. She was very technical in her writing, and she wrote in an era where the novel was still kind of relatively new. So she was like a pioneer of her time, and those don't make it easy to read. They're not easily readable books, and that's okay that you didn't want to go and continue with that journey. That's fine. There's no judgment. If you try, if you want to, if you make an effort, then that's all you can do. And hopefully these other ideas to maybe help you get through a classic will help you try again, and or help you go back to the one that you really, really still wanted to read. Great. I hope that helps. But again, don't ever feel bad for not wanting to finish it, or feel judged for not wanting to finish it or DNF in it, because people will come at you. But haters gonna hate, and you just have to do what you have to do and enjoy your journey as a reader. So there's my guide to reading classics. Hopefully this is helpful to you. Hopefully this is something that you're interested in, and something that can help you on your guide to reading classics. And these things I'm bringing up, will be tying into some of the stuff that I'm going to be mentioning in some of my other future videos on this particular series that I'm doing. So hopefully you can enjoy that in the future and learn more about that as we go along. Let me know down in the comments, what's your favorite classic? I would love to know if it's one that I haven't read, and that'll be really exciting, because then it'll be something that I can read because it's your favorite classic. I would love to know that. That sounds great. Let me know down in the comments. If you like what you saw, want to see more bookish things from me, and or want to see more video in the series, please subscribe and hit likes and bells. I would really appreciate it. As well as follow me on all the social medias down below, and you can see all the things. I'd really appreciate that as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye!